They say the moment you meet your fated mate, the world stops turning. That time itself bends and fractures, and suddenly everything you thought you knew about destiny shatters like glass beneath your feet. I believed that once. I believed it with every fiber of my being when I was 17 years old, standing in the moonlight, watching Callum McTavish look at me like I was the only star in his sky. But what they don't tell you is what happens when that same mate stands at an altar 3 years later, speaking vows to your sister while you're forced to smile and pretend your heart isn't being torn from your chest. What they don't tell you is that sometimes the greatest betrayals come wrapped in the ribbons of duty and family obligation. And what they definitely don't tell you is that the moment you think you've lost everything, the most powerful alpha in 5 territories might just kneel at your feet and change your entire world. This is my story. And I promise you it doesn't end the way you think. My name is Ailsa Mackenzie, and I was born under a blood moon in the Scottish Highlands to a pack that had seen better days. The Mackenzie pack wasn't what it used to be. Once we'd been formidable, our territory stretching across 3 glens and 2 mountain ranges. But that was before the wars, before the treaties, before my father made decisions that slowly bled our influence away like water through cupped hands. By the time I turned 17, we were holding on to relevance by our fingernails, and everyone knew it. Everyone whispered it. And my father, Tormod Mackenzie, was desperate to change our fortune. I had an older sister, Catriona. Beautiful, graceful Catriona with her copper hair that caught fire in the sunlight and her laugh that sounded like wind chimes in summer. She was everything a pack daughter should be. Obedient, demure, skilled in all the traditional ways. She could host a gathering with effortless charm, negotiate minor disputes with the wisdom of someone twice her age, and she never ever questioned our father's authority. I loved her. God help me, despite everything that happened, part of me still loves her. But we were never the same, Catriona and I. Where she was fire and grace, I was storm and stubbornness. Questioned everything. I trained harder than any of the males in our pack, pushing my body until my muscles screamed and my wolf howled for release. I studied strategy and history, devouring every book in our pack library about the old ways, the wars, the alliances that had shaped our world. My father said I had too much spirit for a female. My mother, Aile, would smile sadly and tell me that spirit was a gift, but one that came with a price. I didn't understand what she meant then. Do now. The first time I saw Callum McTavish, I was running through the forest in wolf form, letting my animal side breathe after another suffocating council meeting where I'd been expected to sit silently while the men discussed our pack's future. The moon was 3 days from full, and my wolf was restless, eager, demanding freedom. I'd shifted the moment I crossed into the deep woods, my clothes abandoned in a hollow tree, and I ran. I ran until my paws barely touched the ground, until the wind sang through my fur, until I felt like I could outrun every expectation, every limitation, every cage they tried to build around me. That's when his scent hit me. Pine and mountain rain and something wild, something that called to every instinct I possessed. My wolf stopped dead, ears pricked forward, every sense suddenly razor sharp. And then I saw him. A massive wolf, dark as midnight with eyes like molten amber, standing in a clearing as if he'd been waiting for me his entire life. Our eyes met, and the world tilted. The bond snapped into place with such force that I actually staggered, my wolf whining with recognition and want and 1,000 other emotions I had no name for. The word thundered through my consciousness like a declaration of war and a promise of peace all at once. We circled each other slowly, carefully, the air between us crackling with energy. He was larger than any wolf I'd ever seen, and something about the way he moved told me he was important, powerful. But in that moment none of that mattered. All that mattered was the invisible thread that had just woven itself between our souls, binding us together in a way that nothing could ever break. Or so I thought. We ran together that night, side by side through the ancient forest, leaping over streams and racing through clearings, our wolves singing with the joy of finding what they'd been searching for all along. When we finally shifted back to human form in a sheltered grove, standing naked and unashamed in the moonlight, I learned his name. Callum McTavish. 3rd son of the McTavish Alpha. And even though he wasn't heir to his pack's leadership, He was still far above my station. The McTavish pack was powerful, wealthy, influential. Everything my pack was not. But none of that mattered when he pulled me into his arms and kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. None of that mattered when he whispered against my lips that he'd been searching for me all his life. None of that mattered when we made love under the stars, the mate bond sealing itself with every touch, every whispered promise, every shared breath. I was his. He was mine. The moon herself was our witness. And nothing in this world or any other could change that. That's what I believed. That's what he told me. That's the beautiful, poisonous lie we both lived for 3 perfect months. I was careful about our relationship. Callum wanted to announce it immediately, to make our bond public and official, but I begged him to wait. My father was in the middle of delicate negotiations with the Mois, and I didn't want to disrupt anything with unexpected news. Callum didn't understand at first. Why would our mating be disruptive? Why would it be anything but celebrated? But he agreed to keep it secret for a while longer, to give me time to find the right moment to tell my family. We met in hidden places, in the deep forest and old ruins, stolen moments that felt like they existed outside of time. He told me about his family, about his older brothers, about the weight of expectations he'd never quite managed to carry. I told him about my dreams, about wanting to be more than what my pack expected, about the fire that burned in my chest, demanding I be seen as more than just a future mate and mother. He listened. He saw me. And I thought that was enough. I thought love and fate combined were stronger than anything else in this world. I was so incredibly, devastatingly wrong. The night my world shattered started like any other. My father called a family meeting, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the barely contained excitement in his voice, the way my mother's hands trembled slightly as she poured tea, the way Catriona sat with perfect posture, her face carefully neutral. I remember feeling uneasy as I took my seat, my wolf pacing restlessly beneath my skin. Something was wrong. Something was about to change. My father stood at the head of our worn dining table. His chest puffed with pride I hadn't seen in years. He cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice rang with triumph. The McTavish pack had approached him with a proposal, an alliance through marriage. They wanted to join our families, to strengthen both packs through the sacred bond of mating. It was an incredible honor, he said. An opportunity that would secure our pack's future for generations. My heart began to pound, hope and excitement flooding through me. They knew. Somehow Callum's family had learned about our bond and were making it official. I started to smile, started to stand, my mouth opening to confirm what my father was saying. Then he said her name. Catriona. They wanted Catriona to marry Callum McTavish, third son of Alpha McTavish. The wedding would take place in 3 months, at the next blood moon. It was already decided, already arranged. The contracts were being drawn up. My sister was going to be mated to my fated mate, and judging by her calm expression, she already knew. Everyone knew except me. The room spun. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My wolf was howling, clawing, desperate to burst free and run, to find Callum and demand answers, to make sense of this impossible nightmare. But I sat frozen, watching my sister's face, searching for any sign of distress, any indication that she would refuse. She met my eyes for just a moment, and what I saw there chilled me to my bones. Guilt, yes, but also resignation. Acceptance. She was going to do it. She was going to marry him. I excused myself, my voice somehow steady despite the earthquake tearing through my soul. I walked calmly to my room, closed the door, and then I ran. I shifted the moment I hit the tree line, not caring that I'd left my clothes behind, not caring about anything except getting to Callum, making him explain, making him fix this. Our bond was still there, still singing through my blood, pulling me toward him. He had to feel it too. He had to stop this madness. I found him in his family's estate, in the garden where we'd first kissed in human form. He was standing with his back to me, his shoulders tense, and the moment I approached I knew. I knew by the way he couldn't meet my eyes. I knew by the defeated slump of his posture. I knew by the way the bond between us seemed to pulse with pain instead of joy. He told me everything. His father had arranged it. The McTavish pack didn't want just any alliance with the Mackenzies. They wanted a specific advantage. They were maneuvering against the Moys, and my father's connections, weak as they were, provided a strategic opportunity. Callum's oldest brother was already mated. His second brother was being saved for a more politically advantageous match with a southern pack. That left Callum. And the Mackenzies had 2 daughters. When Callum's father had learned about our bond, rather than celebrating it, he'd seen a problem. I was too independent, too outspoken, too unwilling to play the submissive mate role his family expected. But Catriona was perfect. Biddable, traditional, exactly what they wanted. So he'd given Callum a choice. Reject the mate bond with me and marry Catriona, securing the alliance and his place in the family. Or claim me as his true mate and be disowned, cast out with nothing, forbidden from ever seeing his family again. And Callum, my supposedly fated mate, the man who'd sworn under the moon that nothing could tear us apart, had chosen his family. He'd chosen duty over destiny. He'd chosen comfort over courage. He was going to reject our bond and marry my sister, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I've heard people describe heartbreak as a metaphor, but there was nothing metaphorical about what I felt in that moment. It was physical, visceral, like someone had reached into my chest and was slowly crushing my heart in their fist. The bond between us twisted, turned sharp, began to tear. I felt the exact moment he spoke the rejection words, felt the sacred connection between us start to fray and break. I didn't hear the words themselves over the howling of my wolf, but I felt them. I felt everything shatter. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember shifting back or finding clothes or walking through my front door. The next clear memory I have is sitting on my bedroom floor, hours later, my mother's arms around me while I sobbed until I had nothing left inside. She held me and rocked me and whispered that she was sorry, so sorry, but that sometimes we had to sacrifice for family, for pack. That sometimes our own happiness had to come second to the greater good. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to rage and destroy and make everyone hurt the way I was hurting. But I was empty. Hollow. A shell of the girl I'd been just hours before. The next 3 months were torture. I had to watch Catriona prepare for her wedding. Had to listen to my mother and the other pack females gush about the dress, the ceremony, the honor of such a match. Had to smile and nod and pretend I was happy for my sister when every moment felt like walking through fire. Catriona tried to talk to me once. She came to my room late one night, tears streaming down her face, telling me she never wanted to hurt me, that she'd begged father to refuse the arrangement, that she'd tried everything she could think of. But in the end she'd accepted it. Because that's what dutiful daughters did. That's what pack came before self meant. She asked for my forgiveness, and I gave it to her, even though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. 'Cause she was my sister. Because she was a victim of this too, just in a different way. Because hating her wouldn't change anything. But I couldn't forgive Callum. Every time I saw him during the pre-wedding gatherings, every time our eyes met across a room, I felt the ghost of our bond aching like a phantom limb. He'd rejected me, but the mate bond didn't just disappear. It couldn't be fully severed until he completed a mating with someone else. So I lived in this awful limbo, connected to someone who'd chosen to throw me away, counting down the days until the blood moon when that final connection would be cut. Part of me wanted it to be over quickly, to have the pain finished so I could begin to heal. Another part of me dreaded that moment, because once it was done, once he was truly mated to Catriona, there would be no going back. No possibility of him changing his mind. No hope of the universe correcting this horrible mistake. The day of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the autumn air sharp enough to hurt my lungs. The blood moon wouldn't rise until evening, but preparations had been underway since before dawn. The ceremony was being held on neutral ground, a sacred clearing that had hosted pack celebrations and rituals for centuries. Both the Mackenzie and McTavish packs were in attendance, along with representatives from a dozen other packs. It was more than just a wedding. It was a political statement, a public alliance. My father was nearly vibrating with pride. My mother kept touching her hair nervously, aware that hundreds of eyes would be judging our family today. I was expected to stand as Catriona's sister, to be part of the ceremony, to smile and celebrate. I'd considered refusing, considered running away or claiming illness or simply vanishing into the forest and never coming back. But that would shame my family, would raise questions we didn't want raised. So I put on the ceremonial dress my mother had made, braided silver ribbons into my dark hair, and painted a smile on my face that felt like it might crack at any moment. The clearing was transformed. Hundreds of candles flickered in the growing twilight, their flames reflected in ribbons that hung from every tree branch. Flowers I couldn't name created archways and borders, their scent heavy and cloying in the still air. At the center stood the ritual circle, marked in salt and ash, where Callum and Catriona would speak their vows and seal their bond under the blood moon's witness. The alpha from a neighboring pack would officiate, as tradition demanded when two significant packs joined. Everyone was dressed in their finest, the air buzzing with excitement and anticipation. I took my place near the front, surrounded by family, trying to breathe through the tightness in my chest, trying not to think about how this should have been my wedding. How I should be the one in that white dress embroidered with silver thread. How Callum's promises should have been made to me under this moon. The bond between us was still there, faint but persistent, a constant reminder of what we'd lost, what he'd thrown away, what duty and obligation had stolen from us both. The ceremony began as the sun touched the horizon. Callum entered first, flanked by his brothers, looking devastatingly handsome in traditional Highland dress. His face was carefully blank, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. For a moment, our gazes locked across the distance, and I saw everything he was feeling reflected in those amber depths. Regret, sorrow, grief for what might have been, but not enough. Never enough to actually change anything. He looked away first, and I felt that small rejection like another cut from 1,000 knives. Then came Catriona, and despite everything I had to admit she was breathtaking. Her copper hair was woven with flowers, her dress flowing around her like water, her face serene and lovely in the candlelight. She looked like something from a fairy tale, a princess stepping into her destiny. The crowd murmured appreciation as she walked toward Callum, toward the life that should have been mine. My wolf whimpered, and I shoved her down ruthlessly, refusing to let anyone see my pain. The officiant began the traditional words, speaking of bonds and destiny, of two souls joining to create something stronger than either could be alone. I wanted to laugh at the bitter irony, or scream, or both. My hands were clenched so tightly in my lap that my nails drew blood, small crescents of pain that kept me grounded, kept me present when all I wanted was to disappear. Catriona and Callum spoke their vows, their voices steady and clear. They exchanged the ceremonial knife, making small cuts on their palms and pressing their hands together, mingling their blood. The ancient way of sealing a bond, of joining two wolves together. The blood moon began to rise, huge and red on the horizon, and everyone held their breath. This was the moment, the sacred instant when the moon would witness and bless their union, when the bond between Callum and me would finally, irrevocably break, and a new bond would form between him and my sister. I braced myself for the pain, for the tearing sensation I knew was coming. I would not cry out. I would not give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would endure this with dignity if it killed me. But then something impossible happened. The blood moon crested the trees, bathing the clearing in crimson light, and instead of settling over Callum and Catriona, instead of blessing their union, the light seemed to fracture. Split. Part of it fell over the ritual circle, yes, but the brightest, strongest beam shot across the clearing like an arrow and illuminated me. Just me. Standing among the crowd, frozen in confusion and sudden, overwhelming terror. Every eye turned toward me. Every person in that clearing watched as the blood moon claimed me, marked me, chose me in a way that defied explanation. And then, from the forest behind me, I heard it. A step. Heavy, measured, purposeful. The crowd parted like water, people stumbling over themselves to move aside, and I turned slowly, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. A figure emerged from the tree line, backlit by the blood moon, and even before I saw his face, I felt it. Pull. Connection. Something that made the bond I'd shared with Callum feel like a pale imitation, a rough draft of something far more powerful. He was massive, easily the largest wolf-born man I'd ever seen, broad-shouldered and radiating an authority that pressed against my skin like a physical force. His hair was dark as a raven's wing, worn long enough to brush his shoulders, and his eyes. God! His eyes were silver, pale and bright and ancient. He was dressed simply, all black, with none of the ceremonial finery the rest of us wore, but he didn't need ornamentation. Power rolled off him in waves, and I knew, everyone knew, exactly who he was before anyone spoke his name. Alistair Drummond, the Alpha of Alphas, the wolf who ruled the entire Northern Territories with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. He hadn't been seen in the lower territories in over 5 years, and certainly no one had invited him to this wedding. He had no connection to either the Mackenzie or McTavish packs, no reason to be here. And yet here he stood, his silver eyes locked on me with an intensity that made my knees weak, walking toward me like I was the only person in the entire clearing. The crowd was utterly silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. In my peripheral vision, I could see my father's face, pale and shocked. Could see Callum standing frozen in the ritual circle, blood still dripping from his palm. Could see Catriona's wide eyes, her expression somewhere between terror and confusion. But I couldn't look away from Alistair Drummond as he crossed the space between us with the confidence of a man who'd never been denied anything in his life. He stopped 3 feet away from me, close enough that I could smell him. Pine and snow and something wild and primal that made my wolf surge to the surface for the first time since the rejection. She was pushing at my control, wanting out, wanting to meet this male who made even the air around him seem to bend to his will. And then he did something that sent a ripple of shock through every person present. Alistair Drummond, Alpha of Alphas, ruler of 5 territories, the most powerful wolf in the entire north, bent his knee before me. He dropped down on one knee in the dirt and blood moon light, bowed his head, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the clearing. I claim my mate before the blood moon and the assembled packs. Ailsa Mackenzie, daughter of Tormod, you are mine as I am yours. The moon has shown me your face in my dreams for 5 years, and I have searched every territory, every pack, every hidden corner of our world looking for you. I'm sorry I did not find you sooner. I'm sorry you have known pain. But I am here now, and I swear by the old gods and the moon herself that no one will ever hurt you again. The world tilted. My vision swam. This couldn't be happening. It was impossible. I'd already had a mate, already felt that bond, already lost it. You didn't get 2 mates. The moon didn't make mistakes and then correct them. That wasn't how it worked. That wasn't how any of this worked. And yet, as Alistair raised his head and met my eyes again, I felt it. The snap of connection, the surge of recognition, the absolute certainty that this man, this wolf, this alpha was mine in a way that transcended everything I thought I knew about fate and destiny. The bond with Callum had been a candle flame, warm and bright and beautiful. This was a wildfire. This was the sun. This was power and passion and 1,000 other things I had no name for. And it was terrifying and exhilarating and completely overwhelming. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this impossible man kneeling before me while my entire world rearranged itself into a new pattern I didn't understand. That's not possible, someone said. My father, I think. His voice thin and reedy with shock. She already had a mate. The bond was rejected. You can't, she can't. The bond was false, Alistair said, still not looking away from me. His voice was calm, certain, absolute. Not complete. A connection, yes, but not the true mate bond. I know this because I have carried the mark of my true mate for 5 years, seeing her face in dreams, feeling her presence like a compass pointing north. And she is here. She is real. She is mine. He paused, and something softened in those silver eyes. If she will have me. And suddenly, bafflingly, impossibly, the choice was mine. This man, this alpha who ruled territories and commanded armies of wolves, was asking. Not demanding. Not commanding. Asking. Waiting for my answer with the patience of mountains while chaos erupted around us. Voices were rising, people arguing, someone, Callum, I realized, protesting that this violated every tradition, every law. The officiant was stammering something about needing to consult the ancient texts. My father was trying to push through the crowd toward me. His face red with confusion and what looked like anger or fear or both. But Alistair remained kneeling, remained calm, and I realized that he would stay there as long as necessary. Would wait for my answer while the world burned down around us if that's what it took. And something in that gesture, that show of respect and patience from the most powerful wolf alive, cracked something open inside my chest. Something that had been locked tight and frozen since the night Callum rejected me. I opened my mouth, not sure what I was going to say, and that's when Callum did something incredibly stupid. He left the ritual circle, abandoning Catriona and the ceremony, and lunged toward me. Maybe he was trying to reach me, to talk to me, to explain or apologize or demand that I refuse this alpha's claim. I'll never know. Because the moment he moved in my direction with aggression in his body language, Alistair moved. He was a blur of motion, faster than should be possible for someone his size. One moment kneeling, the next standing between Callum and me like a living wall. His body rigid with threat. A growl rumbled from his chest, so deep and powerful that I felt it vibrate through my bones, and Callum stumbled backward, his face going white. Every wolf in the clearing felt it, the weight of an alpha's displeasure, the promise of violence if boundaries were crossed. Several people actually dropped to their knees, unable to withstand the pressure of his authority. Callum managed to stay standing, but barely. His whole body shaking with the effort. "You rejected her," Alistair said softly, and somehow that quiet tone was more terrifying than any shout could have been. "You had the gift of the moon's favor, the blessing of a mate bond, and you threw it away for politics and comfort. You chose duty over destiny and broke something precious and rare. And now you dare to approach her with any claim of right or ownership. Now you dare to insert yourself into business that no longer concerns you." I made a mistake," Callum stammered, and I saw real fear in his eyes. Fear of this alpha, yes, but also something else. The dawning realization of what he'd lost, what he'd given up. I was young. I was pressured. I didn't understand. "You understood perfectly," Alistair interrupted, still in that same terrifyingly soft tone. "You understood that true strength requires courage, that real love demands sacrifice, and you chose the easier path. That is your right as a free wolf. But do not compound your cowardice by pretending you had no choice, or by attempting to interfere now that the moon has corrected your error." He turned slightly, addressing the entire clearing without taking his attention fully off Callum. "Let me be clear so there is no confusion. Ailsa Mackenzie is my true mate. The moon has confirmed it before all of you with her light and blessing. Any wolf who disputes this, who attempts to interfere with this bond, who makes any claim upon her, will answer to me. Personally. And I promise you, that is not a conversation anyone here wishes to have." The threat hung in the air, crystal clear and absolutely serious. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the wind seemed afraid to rustle the leaves. After a long moment, Callum bowed his head in submission and backed away, returning to the ritual circle where Catriona stood frozen, her hand still bleeding from the interrupted ceremony. I should have felt something watching him retreat. Satisfaction maybe, or vindication, or even pity. But I felt nothing where he was concerned. That whole connection, that chapter of my life, suddenly felt distant and unimportant, like something that had happened to someone else in another lifetime. Alistair turned back to me, and the hardness melted from his expression, replaced by something gentle and almost vulnerable. He knelt again, reclaiming that posture of respect and petition. "I apologize for the display of aggression in your presence," he said quietly, for my ears only, though I knew everyone with supernatural hearing could catch his words. But I will not allow anyone to threaten or distress you. Not now. Not ever. You have been hurt enough. How do you know? I whispered, my voice cracking on the words. How do you know what I've been through? You don't know me. But I do, he said simply. I have seen you in my dreams for 5 years. Watched you run through forests. Seen you laugh and cry and rage against unfairness. Felt your pain as if it were my own, especially these last months. The moon shows true mates to each other, Ailsa. She has been showing me to you as well in your dreams. You simply didn't recognize me because we had never met. Think back. Think about the silver-eyed wolf who has run beside you in your dreams, who has stood guard while you slept, who has called to you in ways you couldn't name. I thought back, and shock rolled through me as memories clicked into place. Dreams I dismissed as fantasy, as my imagination creating comfort in the midst of pain. A massive dark wolf with eyes like starlight, always at the edge of my awareness, always watching, always waiting. I'd thought I was making him up, conjuring a guardian spirit to help me survive the heartbreak. But he'd been real. He'd been this alpha, searching for me, connected to me in ways I hadn't understood. Why now? Asked, my voice steadier. Why did you wait until today, until this moment, to reveal yourself? Because I didn't know where you were until 3 days ago, he said, and I heard genuine frustration in his tone. The Mackenzie pack is small, remote. You keep to yourselves, attend few gatherings. I have had wolves searching every territory for 5 years, and it wasn't until word spread of this wedding that one of my people recognized your description. I came as soon as I learned, traveled without stopping, praying to the moon that I would arrive in time. In time to prevent you from watching a false mate bond be completed. In time to claim you before you were lost to me forever. I don't understand any of this, I admitted, feeling tears prick at my eyes for the first time since he'd appeared. I don't understand how the moon could let me believe Callum was my mate. I don't understand how I can feel this connection to you when we just met. I don't understand why you would want me, someone from a nothing pack with no influence or power or... Stop, he said gently and reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, giving me every chance to pull away. When I didn't, his hand cupped my cheek, warm and solid and real. You are not defined by your pack's status or your father's influence. You are intelligent, fierce, loyal, and strong enough to survive heartbreak that would have destroyed a lesser wolf. I want you because you are mine, yes, but also because you are exactly the kind of mate, the kind of partner I have hoped to find. Someone with fire and spirit and the courage to question authority, even mine when necessary. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? You don't know me, I repeated, but the words had less conviction this time. Then let me learn, he said simply. Give me a chance to court you properly, to prove myself worthy of your trust. You don't have to accept the mate bond immediately. I know you need time, need healing. But don't reject it out of fear or hurt or the belief that you don't deserve happiness. Let the bond exist between us, let it grow naturally, and decide in your own time whether you want to complete it. I will wait. I have waited 5 years already. I can wait longer if that's what you need. I looked around the clearing at all the faces watching us with various expressions of shock, awe, fear, and fascination. My father looked like he might faint or explode, I couldn't tell which. My mother had her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling at me with something like pride and hope. Catriona had moved away from the ritual circle, had come closer, and when our eyes met, she nodded slightly. Permission, I realized. Or maybe just understanding. My sister, who'd been forced into a marriage she didn't want to save our pack, was giving me permission to choose differently. And then there was the blood moon, still shining directly on me, still marking me with light that shouldn't be possible according to everything I knew about pack law and tradition. The moon herself seemed to be holding her breath, waiting for my answer, waiting for me to choose fear or courage, pain or possibility, the safety of known suffering or the terror of unknown joy. I thought about the girl I'd been 3 months ago. Confident, fierce, unafraid to demand more from life than what was handed to her. That girl had been beaten down, broken by rejection and duty and the cruelty of circumstance. But she wasn't dead. She was still inside me, still fighting, still demanding that I choose myself for once. Still insisting that I deserved more than scraps and compromises and making myself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. I looked back at Alistair, at this impossible alpha kneeling before me in the dirt, offering me everything and asking for nothing except a chance. And I remembered my mother's words from years ago, about spirit being a gift that came with a price. I'd thought she meant I would have to suppress my spirit, that the price was suffocating who I really was to fit into the role expected of me. But maybe she'd meant something different. Maybe she'd meant that real spirit, true strength, meant being brave enough to reach for what you wanted even when it terrified you. Even when every voice of doubt and fear screamed that you didn't deserve it, that it was too good to be true, that you would only end up hurt again. "Ask me properly," I heard myself say, my voice strong and clear in the moonlit silence. "If you want to court me, if you want a chance to prove yourself, then ask me properly. I am Ailsa Mackenzie, daughter of Tormod and Islay, and I deserve to be asked, not claimed, not commanded, asked." Something blazed in his silver eyes, something that looked like fierce pride and deep respect. He straightened slightly, still on his knee, and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Ailsa Mackenzie, daughter of Tormod and Islay, woman of fire and spirit and unbreakable strength, I am Alistair Drummond, Alpha of the Northern Territories, and I am asking you, not as an alpha to a subject, not as a male to a female, but as one soul to its other half, will you allow me the honor and privilege of courting you? Will you give me the chance to prove myself worthy of your trust, your time, and eventually, if I am blessed beyond measure, your heart?" The clearing was so silent I could hear the candle flames flickering in the wind. Every eye was on us, witnessing this moment, this impossible reversal of everything that was supposed to happen tonight. I should have been watching my sister marry my former mate. Instead, I was standing in blood moonlight being courted by the most powerful alpha alive. Life, it seemed, had a sense of irony. "Yes," I said simply, and watched relief and joy transform his face into something almost beautiful. "I will let you court me, Alistair Drummond. But know this, I have been broken once by false promises and duty disguised as destiny. I will not be easy to win. I will question you, challenge you, and test whether your words match your actions. And if at any point you prove yourself to be like him, I didn't look at Callum, didn't need to, everyone knew who I meant. If you prove to be a man who speaks beautiful words but lacks the courage to stand behind them, I will walk away and never look back. Alpha or not, mate bond or not, I will not settle for less than I deserve ever again." "I would expect nothing less," he said, and rose to his feet in one fluid motion. "And I would be disappointed in anything less. A mate who never challenges me, who simply agrees with everything I say, would bore me senseless within a week. I want your fire, Ailsa, your strength, your willingness to call me on my mistakes and demand better. That is what a true partnership looks like. That is what I have been searching for." He offered me his hand, palm up, letting me choose whether to take it. I hesitated only a moment before placing my hand in his, feeling the electric spark of contact, the way the mate bond hummed with approval at even this simple touch. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and he turned to face the assembled crowd, particularly my father. "Tormod Mackenzie," Alistair said formally, his voice carrying the weight of alpha authority. "I ask your blessing to court your daughter, though I will court her with or without it. I would prefer to have your approval and goodwill, but I will not allow anyone to stand between me and my mate. Not even her father." My father looked like he was trying to swallow a live fish. His face had gone through several shades of red and purple, and I could practically see his mind racing, trying to calculate the political implications, the social ramifications, the sheer impossibility of refusing the alpha of alphas. Finally he managed a stiff nod. "You have my blessing," he croaked out, then seemed to gather himself. "It would be an honor for our family, for our pack, to have such a connection to your territories, Alpha Drummond." "The honor is mine," Alistair said smoothly, but I heard the undercurrent in his words. The reminder that this wasn't about pack politics or alliances. This was about two people, two souls finding each other. He wasn't courting me for my pack's connections or my father's influence. He was courting me for me. And that distinction mattered more than I could say. The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly, drawing attention back to the interrupted ceremony. There is still the matter of the MacTavish-Mackenzie alliance, he said carefully, diplomatically. The ceremony was begun but not completed. Technically, no bond was sealed, but contracts were signed, agreements were made. The contracts are void, Alistair said flatly, and though his voice was calm, there was steel underneath. A mating ceremony interrupted by the appearance of a true mate bond, confirmed by the blood moon herself, cannot proceed. To do so would be to spit in the face of the moon's will and invite her wrath upon both packs. I trust no one here is foolish enough to want that. Several people went very pale at that reminder. The moon's favor was not something any wolf took lightly, and her displeasure was the stuff of legends and warnings. No one wanted to test whether those stories were true. The officiant nodded quickly, making notes in his ceremonial book. Of course, Alpha Drummond. The ceremony will be declared null, the contracts dissolved. Though this does leave the matter of the alliance that was supposed to be sealed. I will personally guarantee the Mackenzie pack security and prosperity, Alistair said, and I felt shock ripple through me along with everyone else. That was no small promise. That was the alpha of alphas essentially taking my pack under his direct protection, elevating our status from minor border pack to something connected to the highest power in the territories. My father looked like he might actually faint now. His face gone from purple to ash white. Consider it part of my courtship gift, Alistair continued, glancing at me with a slight smile. I believe it's traditional to offer the pack some compensation when courting one of their daughters. That's far too generous, my father stammered, and for once I agreed with him. What Alistair was offering was worth 100 marriage alliances, 1,000 political maneuverings. Ailsa is worth far more, Alistair said simply, and the way he said it, the absolute conviction in his voice, made my throat tight with emotion. And as for the MacTavish pack, he turned his silver gaze on Callum and his family, and I saw several of them actually step backward. Your son rejected his true mate for political gain. That is his choice to make, and the consequences are his to bear. The alliance you sought with the Mackenzies is dissolved. You will not approach Ailsa again, will not attempt to re-establish any claim or connection to her. She is under my protection now, and my protection extends to ensuring she is never distressed by reminders of painful history. Am I understood? It was Callum's father, Alpha MacTavish, who answered, bowing his head in submission. Perfectly understood, Alpha Drummond. We meant no disrespect, no harm. We were simply trying to strengthen our pack's position. By breaking a mate bond and treating females as bargaining chips, Alistair interrupted coldly. Yes, I understand perfectly what you were trying to do. And I am telling you it ends now. The old ways of treating matings as purely political arrangements are dying, and I will not allow them to continue in territories under my influence. Males and females both deserve the chance to find true happiness, not be sacrificed on the altar of pack politics. He looked around the clearing, making eye contact with various alphas and pack leaders present. Let this serve as notice to all packs in the Northern Territories. I will be taking a more active role in governance going forward, ensuring that the vulnerable are protected and that traditions that no longer serve us are changed. Anyone who has issue with this is welcome to challenge me. Anyone who thinks I am overstepping my authority as Alpha of Alphas may face me in formal combat for the right to lead. I assure you I welcome all challengers. No one spoke. No one moved. The offer of challenge hung in the air, formal and binding, but no one was stupid enough to take him up on it. Alistair Drummond was legendary for his strength and skill in combat. He'd won his position not through inheritance but through a series of challenges that had left him undefeated for 12 years. No one wanted to face him in the combat circle. After a long moment of silence, Alistair nodded, satisfied. Then we are in agreement. The ceremony is dissolved, the alliance shifted, and Ailsa Mackenzie is acknowledged as my mate-to-be, under formal courtship protection. I will be remaining in this territory for the next several weeks while I court her properly. I trust all Pax will extend appropriate hospitality and respect. It wasn't a request, and everyone knew it. There were murmurs of agreement, bows of acknowledgement, the entire social order rearranging itself around this new reality. I stood there holding Alistair's hand, my head spinning, trying to process how completely my life had just changed in the span of maybe 30 minutes. This morning I'd woken up dreading this day, resigned to watching my former mate marry my sister, expecting it to be the worst day of my life. Now I was being courted by an alpha, my Pax fortune had been secured, and the blood moon was still shining down on me like a blessing. Catriona approached carefully, and Alistair squeezed my hand once before stepping slightly back, giving me space to talk to my sister. She looked beautiful and sad and relieved all at once, her wedding dress seeming suddenly out of place given that there would be no wedding tonight. "Are you all right?" I asked her quietly, and she laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "I should be asking you that," she said. "Ailsa, the alpha of alphas this is insane." "I know," I admitted. "I don't understand any of it. I don't know why the moon would do this, why she would let me suffer through Callum only to—" "Maybe she didn't let you suffer," Catriona interrupted softly. "Maybe she was teaching you something you needed to know. Maybe you needed to learn who you were, what you were willing to fight for, before you could be ready for him." She glanced at Alistair, who was standing a respectful distance away, talking quietly with the officiant but clearly keeping awareness on me. "He's not Callum, Ailsa. I can tell that just from watching him for 10 minutes. He sees you. Really sees you. And he's not afraid of your strength. How can you be okay with this?" "Yes. You were supposed to get married tonight. Father will probably try to find you another match now, another alliance." "Let him try," Catriona said, and there was steel in her voice I'd never heard before. "I watched you these past months, watched you survive something that should have destroyed you, and I learned something. I learned that I don't want to live my life doing only what's expected, what's safe, what Father demands. I want more. And if you can be brave enough to reach for it, then so can I." She hugged me tightly, whispering in my ear, "Be happy, little sister. You deserve it more than anyone I know." The crowd began to disperse slowly, people heading back to their camps and homes, the ceremony definitively over even if not in the way anyone had expected. Alistair returned to my side, and I realized we needed to talk, really talk, away from all these watching eyes and listening ears. "Walk with me?" I asked, and he nodded immediately, letting me lead him away from the clearing, into the forest where this whole twisted story had begun months ago. We walked in silence for a while, our hands still linked, the mate bond humming contentedly between us even though neither of us had formally accepted it yet. Finally, we reached a small stream where moonlight filtered through the trees, creating patterns of silver and shadow on the water. "I need to know something," I said, turning to face him. "And I need you to be completely honest with me. Why did you really come here tonight? Was it just because you felt the mate bond and wanted to claim what was yours? Or was it something more?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those ancient silver eyes. Then he sighed and sat down on a fallen log, pulling me gently to sit beside him. "The truth is complicated," he admitted. "Yes, I felt the mate bond 5 years ago, saw you in my dreams, and have been searching for you ever since. That's all true. But the reason I came tonight, the reason I timed my arrival for this specific moment, was because I knew you needed to see something." "See what?" I asked, confused. "That you are worth fighting for," he said simply. "These past months you have been watching and believing that you were disposable, that your mate threw you away because you weren't good enough, weren't valuable enough, weren't worth the risk of defying his family. You've been internalizing that rejection, letting it define you. I could feel it through our bond, even though you didn't know I existed. I could feel you dimming, letting your fire be smothered under doubt and pain." He reached up, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch gentle. I wanted you to see, in the most public and undeniable way possible, that you are worth defying tradition for, worth crossing territories for, worth bowing before in front of every pack leader in the region. I wanted everyone who has ever made you feel small or insignificant to watch as the most powerful alpha alive declared that you are precious beyond measure. 'Cause you are Ailsa. You are extraordinary, and you deserve to know it. Tears were streaming down my face before I could stop them, all the grief and pain and confusion of the past months pouring out in a flood I couldn't contain. Alistair pulled me against his chest, holding me while I sobbed, one hand stroking my hair, the other rubbing soothing circles on my back. He didn't try to quiet me or tell me everything was fine. He just held me and let me break, let me release all the poison I'd been carrying, let me grieve for the girl I'd been and the innocence I'd lost. When I finally quieted, hiccuping and exhausted, he tilted my chin up so I had to meet his eyes. I cannot promise that I will be perfect, he said seriously. I am alpha of 5 territories, which means I have responsibilities and demands on my time that will sometimes take me away from you. I have enemies who will see you as a target, who might try to use you to hurt me. I have a temper that I work hard to control but that sometimes gets away from me. I am old Ailsa, far older than you, and I have habits and ways of doing things that might frustrate you. I am not a fairy tale prince who will solve all your problems and make your life endlessly easy. Then what are you? I whispered. I am a male who has waited 5 years to find you, he said. A male who will spend every day trying to be worthy of your trust. A male who will fight anyone and anything that tries to harm you, but who will also support you when you want to fight your own battles. I will listen when you speak, consider your counsel, and respect your strength. I will make mistakes, but I will own them and work to do better. I will be your mate, your partner, your equal in all things. And I will love you with everything I have for as long as we both live. That is what I am offering. Not perfection but dedication. Not a fairy tale, but a real partnership between 2 strong wolves who choose each other every single day. I looked at him, this impossible alpha who had crashed into my life like a force of nature, and I felt the last of my walls crumbling. The mate bond was glowing brightly now, fully present between us, waiting for acceptance. Not demanding it, not forcing it, just waiting patiently for me to be ready. And I realized something. I was ready. Maybe not to complete the bond, not tonight, but to try. To let myself hope again. To be brave enough to reach for happiness even though it terrified me. I want to know you, I said. Not Alpha Drummond, not the ruler of territories, but Alistair. The man behind the power. I want to know what makes you laugh, what keeps you awake at night, what dreams you have beyond finding your mate. I want real, not performance. Can you give me that? Yes, he said without hesitation. I would prefer that, actually. Being alpha all the time is exhausting. I would very much like someone I can be simply Alistair with. He smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, more approachable. Though I should warn you, I am actually quite boring when I'm not being alpha. I like to read history books, I'm decent at cooking but terrible at baking. And I have a completely irrational fear of spiders despite being able to transform into a creature with claws and fangs. I laughed, the sound startling me because I couldn't remember the last time I genuinely laughed. Spiders. Really? They have too many legs, he said seriously, but his eyes were dancing with humor. It's unnatural. Nothing should need that many legs. This from a male who turns into a wolf with 4 legs. I pointed out, and he grinned. 4 is a reasonable number of legs. 8 is just showing off, he said, and I laughed again, feeling something light and warm blooming in my chest. Hope, I realized. For the first time in months I felt genuine hope. The next few weeks were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Alistair was true to his word. He remained in the territory, staying in a cottage on the edge of Mackenzie lands rather than imposing on my family directly. He courted me properly, the old-fashioned way, with walks and conversations and small gifts that showed he was paying attention to who I was. He brought me books on strategy and history, knowing I loved to read. He arranged for weapons training with one of his best fighters, knowing I wanted to be stronger. He sat with me in comfortable silence when I needed space, and engaged in passionate debates when I wanted intellectual challenge. He also made good on his promise to my pack. Within a week, Mackenzie borders were secured by Drummond warriors. Our coffers were supplemented with resources from his territories, and my father was invited to councils he'd been excluded from for years. Our pack's status rose dramatically, and suddenly other packs were treating us with respect we'd never commanded before. But Alistair made it clear that this wasn't charity or political maneuvering. This was him protecting and providing for his mate's family, which was both his right and his duty according to old traditions that most modern wolves had forgotten. I learned things about him too. Learned that he rose before dawn every day to run in wolf form, that he had a deep love for the old songs and stories, that he'd lost his parents young and been forced to fight for his position when he was barely old enough to shift. Learned that he carried the weight of his territories like a physical burden, that he worried constantly about the wolves under his protection, that he sometimes woke from nightmares about failing them. He let me see his vulnerabilities, his fears, his imperfections. And every time he did, every time he trusted me with something real and human beneath the alpha exterior, I felt myself falling deeper. But I also tested him. I challenged his decisions, questioned his reasoning, pushed back when I thought he was wrong. And true to his word, he listened. He didn't always agree with me, and we had some spectacular arguments that probably terrified anyone within earshot, but he never dismissed me, never told me to be quiet or obedient or anything less than exactly who I was. He respected my fire, my intelligence, my strength. And that respect meant everything. Callum tried to approach me once during those weeks. I was walking through the market in the village centre when I spotted him lingering near a vendor, clearly waiting for me. The moment I saw him I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no longing for what might have been. Just a distant sort of pity for a male who'd had something precious and thrown it away. Alistair was at my side in seconds. He'd been giving me space to shop alone but had clearly been tracking me just in case. He didn't threaten Callum, didn't even acknowledge him. He simply offered me his arm, asked if I was ready to head home, and walked with me past Callum as if he were invisible, making it clear without words that Callum no longer mattered, no longer had any place in my life or thoughts. Catriona, meanwhile, was thriving in an unexpected way. Without the pressure of the forced marriage, she'd started spending time with a young wolf from a neighboring pack, Fingal Murray. Someone she'd apparently been interested in for years but had never pursued because father would never have approved the match. Now, with our pack's elevated status and father distracted by his sudden political importance, she was courting who she wanted. And watching her bloom with happiness, watching her become more confident and animated, I realized we'd both been saved that night. Not just me but her too. One evening, about 3 weeks into the courtship, Alistair took me to the same clearing where everything had changed. The blood moon had waned and waxed again, and now hung full and bright and silver in the night sky. We stood in the center of the ritual circle, and he took both my hands in his. "I need to ask you something important," he said seriously. "And I need you to answer honestly, without worrying about my feelings or what you think I want to hear." "All right," I agreed, my heart starting to pound. "Are you healing?" he asked quietly. "Are you truly moving past what happened with Callum, or are you simply covering the wounds and pretending? Because I will wait as long as you need, Ailsa. Years if necessary. But I need to know you're choosing me because you want me, not because you're trying to prove something or escape painful memories." I thought about his question seriously, examining my own heart with ruthless honesty. "I would be lying if I said it didn't still hurt sometimes," I admitted. "Not because I want him back, I don't, not even a little. But because rejection leaves scars, and scars ache when the weather changes. But yes, I'm healing. More than that, I'm growing. Becoming someone stronger than I was before. And you're part of that healing, Alistair. Not because you're fixing me or saving me, but because you're giving me space to fix myself while standing beside me ready to help if I need it. That's what I needed. What I still need." "And us?" he asked, his silver eyes intense on mine. What do you feel when you think about us? About completing the mate bond? I feel terrified, I said honestly, and saw him flinch slightly. But not because of you. Because of how much I'm starting to care, how deep this is already getting. Because the mate bond with Callum felt so right, so certain, and it still fell apart. What if this is just as fragile? What if fate is cruel and this gets taken away too? Then we fight for it, Alistair said fiercely, squeezing my hands. That's the difference, Ailsa. Callum didn't fight. He chose the easy path when things got difficult. But I am not him. I have fought for everything I have. My position, my territories, my survival. And I will fight for you, for us, with everything I possess. Fate might give us the bond, but we make it strong. We choose each other day after day, through good and bad, through easy and impossible. That's what real mating looks like. Not perfect destiny handed to us on a silver platter, but partnership forged through choice and effort and dedication. I felt tears prick my eyes again, but they were different tears this time. Not grief or pain, but something cleaner. Something like joy mixed with relief and overwhelming emotion. I'm ready, I whispered. I'm ready to accept the bond, to complete it, to choose you the way you've been choosing me every day for weeks. His eyes flared silver bright. His wolf rising to the surface. Are you certain? There's no rush, Ailsa. I meant what I said. I'll wait as long as you need. I'm certain, I said firmly. I want this. I want you. I want us. I paused, then added with a slight smile. Besides, if I wait much longer, my wolf might actually mutiny. She's been demanding I claim you for a week now. He laughed, the sound rich and warm, and pulled me closer. My wolf has been rather insistent as well. I've been having extremely detailed dreams that I probably shouldn't describe in polite company. Who said anything about polite company? I asked, rising on my toes to kiss him. It was our first real kiss. We'd shared small touches, brief presses of lips, but nothing like this. Nothing that ignited the mate bond like touching flame to kindling. Heat exploded between us, the bond roaring to life fully, and I felt the exact moment it clicked into place completely. Felt the walls between our souls dissolve. Felt his emotions and thoughts begin to bleed into mine just as mine flowed into his. Joy, fierce protectiveness, desire, love so deep and vast it took my breath away. All of it flooding through me from him, while he felt my trust, my growing love, my absolute certainty that this was right. We broke apart, both breathing hard, and he rested his forehead against mine. We should do this properly, he said, his voice rough. With ceremony and witnesses, Anne. Or we could do this our way, I interrupted. Just us and the moon and the forest. Let the formal ceremony come later if we want one, but let this moment be ours alone. Are you sure? He asked. You deserve a grand ceremony celebration. I deserve what makes me happy, I corrected gently. And what makes me happy is this. You and me, and no pressure, no politics, no audience. Just two people choosing each other under the moon that brought us together. Isn't that what really matters? Yes, he breathed and kissed me again. That's all that really matters. We completed the mate bond there in that clearing, under the full moon's silver light, with only the ancient trees as witnesses. And this time, when the bond settled into place, when I felt it lock and seal and become permanent, there was no fear, no doubt. Just absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be, with exactly who I was meant to be with. The pain of the false bond with Callum had led me here, had shaped me into someone strong enough to appreciate what I now had. And standing in Alistair's arms, feeling his heart beat in rhythm with mine through the completed mate bond, I understood what my mother had meant years ago. Spirit did come with a price, but that price was worth paying. Because spirit meant refusing to settle, refusing to be diminished, refusing to accept anything less than the life and love you deserved. 6 months later I stood in that same clearing once again, but everything was different. My hair was woven with silver and white flowers, and I wore a dress that actually felt like me, strong and elegant and just a little bit wild, like something a warrior queen might wear. Alistair stood at the center of the ritual circle in formal Highland dress, looking devastating and barely able to contain his smile. And this time the crowd that gathered was here to celebrate something real, something chosen, something that had already been tested and proven strong. We'd decided to have a formal ceremony after all, but on our terms. Not because we needed the moon's blessing, we already had that, but because we wanted to share our joy with the people we cared about. Catriona stood beside me as my honor attendant, radiant with her own happiness, Fingal having formally asked to court her just last week. My mother cried happy tears. My father looked proud and slightly overwhelmed, still adjusting to our pack's new status and his daughter's position as mate to the alpha of alphas. But more than that, wolves had come from all 5 territories to witness this mating. To see their alpha happy, settled, partnered with someone strong enough to stand beside him. And as I walked toward Alistair, as I saw the love and pride and absolute certainty in his silver eyes, I thought about the girl I'd been when this story started. The girl who'd been broken by betrayal, who'd thought she'd lost everything. I wanted to go back and tell her that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are doorways to the best ones. That sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. That sometimes the mate bond we think we want is just preparing us for the one we actually need. The officiant, a different one this time, one who actually looked happy to be there, began the traditional words. But I barely heard them. All my attention was on Alistair, on the mate I had chosen and who had chosen me right back every single day. On the partner who had shown me what real love looked like. Not pretty words and empty promises, but consistent action and unwavering support and the courage to fight for what mattered. When it came time for our vows, Alistair went first. I promised to see you always. Not the role you play or the expectations others have, but the real you beneath. I promised to celebrate your strength and support you in weakness. I promised to listen even when you say things I don't want to hear, and to trust you even when fear tells me to protect and control. I promised to fight beside you, not for you, and to remember that you are my equal in all things. I promised to choose you every day, through easy and impossible, through joy and sorrow, through every challenge our lives together will bring. This is my vow, witnessed by the moon and these gathered packs. You are mine, and I am yours today and always. Then it was my turn, and I looked into his eyes and spoke from my heart. I promise to trust you with my scars and my strength both. I promise to challenge you when needed and support you always. I promise to be your partner, not your subject, and to demand that you be your best self even when that's uncomfortable. I promise to choose courage over fear, hope over cynicism, and love over the safety of walls and distance. I promise to fight for us, for this bond, for the life we're building together. You saved me not by fixing me but by showing me I was worth saving. And I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that your faith was not misplaced. This is my vow, witnessed by the moon and these gathered packs. You are mine, and I am yours today and always. We sealed the vows the traditional way, the ceremonial cut and mixing of blood, and when the moon shone down on us this time, it felt like approval, like celebration. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Alistair pulled me close, kissing me thoroughly while everyone hooped and hollered their approval. And for the first time in a long time, maybe ever, I felt complete. Not because a male completed me, but because I had finally become fully myself, the person I was always meant to be. And I had found someone who loved that person fiercely and unconditionally. The celebration afterward was magnificent. 3 full days of feasting, dancing, games, and joy. Wolves from all territories mingled freely, old grudges set aside in honor of the occasion. Alistair and I snuck away when we could, stealing moments alone, but we also stayed present, grateful for the community that was celebrating with us. Because that was what this was really about. Not just 2 wolves finding each other, but the building of something larger. A partnership that would strengthen territories, protect packs, and hopefully show others that the old ways of forced matings and political marriages could be changed. On the final night of celebration, as the last of the guests were preparing to leave, Callum approached us. I saw Alistair tense, but I put a hand on his arm, silently asking him to wait to let me handle this. Callum stopped a respectful distance away. his head bowed in submission. "I came to apologize," he said quietly. "Not because I think it will change anything or earn forgiveness, but because you deserve to hear it. Elsa, I was a coward. I had something precious, something sacred, and I threw it away because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my family, my position, my comfort. And I have spent every day since regretting that choice. Not because I lost you, I know I have no right to you anymore, but because I lost the version of myself that would have been brave enough to fight for what mattered. You deserved better. You deserved someone who would move mountains for you. And I'm glad you found him." He glanced at Alistair, genuine respect in his eyes. "Treat her well, Alpha. She is extraordinary." "I know," Alistair said simply, his arm around my waist. "And I will." Callum nodded and turned to leave, but I stopped him with a word. "Callum." He turned back, and I took a breath before speaking. "I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because carrying anger and hurt isn't serving me anymore. You made your choice, and it led me to exactly where I needed to be. So thank you in a strange way for being the wrong mate at the right time. I hope you find the courage you were missing. I hope you become the male you were meant to be. And I hope someday you find a love that makes you brave enough to fight for it." He looked at me with something like awe, nodded once, and then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd. Alistair pulled me closer, kissing the top of my head. "You are far more gracious than he deserves," he murmured. "Maybe," I agreed. "But forgiveness is for me, not for him. I refuse to let that chapter of my life have any more power over me. I'm done looking backward. From now on, I'm only looking forward." "And what do you see when you look forward?" he asked, turning me in his arms so we were face to face. I pretended to think about it seriously. "I see a stubborn alpha who's going to argue with me constantly. I see 5 territories worth of politics and responsibility. I see challenges and difficulties and probably more than a few conflicts that will test us." "Sounds terrible," he said with a grin. "I'm not finished," I continued, my smile growing. "I also see adventures and partnership and someone who will stand beside me through everything. I see a future where I get to be completely myself and be loved for it. I see children someday, maybe, running wild through forests with silver eyes and too much spirit. I see a life worth living, worth fighting for, worth choosing every single day. That's what I see when I look forward. And it's everything I never knew I wanted. Children with too much spirit," he repeated thoughtfully. "That's a terrifying prospect." "You're the alpha of 5 territories," I pointed out. "Surely you can handle a few wild children." "A few?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "How many are we talking about here?" "I don't know yet," I said innocently. "But I come from a family of 2 daughters, and you mentioned you had 2 brothers, so maybe 3. 4. We'll see what happens." He laughed, the sound rich and full of joy. "4 children with your stubbornness and my authority issues. The territories won't know what hit them." "Exactly," I agreed. "We're going to raise little revolutionaries who change the world." "I'm counting on it," he said seriously, and kissed me again, deep and sweet and full of promise. As I stood there in Alistair's arms, the celebration continuing around us, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. About the girl who'd run through the forest 6 months ago, desperate to escape the pain of watching her mate marry her sister. That girl had thought her story was ending, that she'd lost everything that mattered. She'd been so wrong. Sometimes the universe breaks us open not to destroy us, but to remake us into something stronger. Sometimes what feels like the worst betrayal is actually a gift in disguise, redirecting us toward something better than we'd imagined. And sometimes the mate bond we think we want is just a stepping stone to the one we actually need. I'd learned so much in these months. I'd learned that I was strong enough to survive heartbreak and come out the other side more myself than ever. I'd learned that real love doesn't ask you to be smaller, quieter, more convenient. It celebrates your fire and fans the flames higher. I'd learned that the right partner doesn't complete you. They stand beside you while you complete yourself, offering support but never trying to do the work for you. I'd learned that forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying anger and pain. And I'd learned that sometimes the best things in life come not from following the path laid out for us, but from having the courage to walk away from it when it doesn't fit. The Mackenzie pack was thriving in ways we'd never dreamed possible. With Alistair's protection and resources, we'd rebuilt infrastructure, expanded territory, and attracted young wolves looking for a pack that balanced tradition with progress. My father had grown into his new role, finally leading with confidence instead of desperation. My mother was training young females in the old arts, passing on knowledge that had nearly been lost. And Catriona was planning her own mating ceremony with Fingal, radiant with a happiness that was all her own choosing. As for me, I was discovering what it meant to be mate to an alpha. It wasn't easy. Alistair hadn't lied about the demands on his time, the enemies who saw me as a target, the politics that could be exhausting and frustrating. But it was also extraordinary. I had a voice in decisions that affected thousands of wolves. I had the power to make changes that actually helped people. I had a partner who valued my counsel and strength, who made me part of his world instead of expecting me to simply orbit his. We traveled between territories, and I learned about different packs, different customs, different challenges. I trained with the best warriors, studied with the wisest advisors, and slowly began to understand the weight Alistair carried every day. But I also saw how my presence lightened that weight. How coming home to me let him shed the armor of Alpha and just be Alistair. How my challenges and questions made him a better leader, forcing him to examine his assumptions and consider different perspectives. We were making each other better, stronger, more complete. That's what real partnership looked like. There were still hard days. Days when the ghost of Callum's rejection whispered that I wasn't enough, that this was too good to last, that surely Alistair would eventually realize he'd made a mistake. But Alistair always seemed to sense those moments, and he would hold me and remind me of my worth until the doubts faded. And slowly, over time, those doubts came less frequently, their voices growing quieter as I built new memories and new certainties to replace the old wounds. I also had to learn how to be vulnerable again, how to trust someone with my whole heart after having it broken. That was harder than any physical challenge, harder than any political maneuvering. But Alistair was patient, never pushing, always waiting for me to come to him when I was ready. And each time I opened up, each time I shared a fear or a hope or a dream, the bond between us grew stronger. Trust wasn't built in grand gestures. It was built in small moments, consistent actions, promises kept day after day until they became unshakable foundation. I want you to know something, whoever you are listening to this story. Whether you're someone who's been betrayed by a mate, or rejected by someone you loved, or told you weren't good enough, or forced to watch someone else get what should have been yours. Whether you're carrying wounds that feel like they'll never heal, or doubts that whisper you don't deserve happiness. I want you to know that your story isn't over. That closed door, that ended chapter, that painful rejection, it's not the ending. It's the beginning of something you can't see yet. I thought my story ended the night Callum rejected me. I thought I'd lost my only chance at the mate bond, at real love, at the life I'd dreamed of. I couldn't see that I was being redirected towards something infinitely better. I couldn't see that I needed to be broken open and rebuilt before I could be ready for a love as powerful and deep as what I found with Alistair. I couldn't see that every painful step was leading me exactly where I needed to be. Your pain is real. Your grief is valid. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't matter or that you should just get over it. But I am telling you that it's not the end of your story. That somewhere out there, there's a life waiting for you that's better than anything you've imagined. There's a version of yourself that's stronger and wiser and more fully alive than you've ever been. There's a love that will celebrate every part of you, even the parts you've been told to hide or change or apologize for. But here's the thing, you have to choose it. You have to choose to heal, to grow, to believe you deserve better. You have to choose to walk away from what isn't serving you, even when it's scary, even when it means disappointing people, even when it feels like you're giving up the only chance you'll ever get. You have to choose to be brave enough to reach for what you really want instead of settling for what feels safe or acceptable or expected. It won't be easy. There will be days when you want to give up, when the pain feels like too much, when hope seems foolish and naive. But keep going. Keep choosing yourself. Keep believing that your story isn't finished, that the best chapters are still ahead, that the universe isn't cruel. It's just preparing you for something you're not ready for yet. And when your moment comes, and it will come, I promise you it will come. When that door opens or that person appears or that opportunity presents itself, don't let fear hold you back. Don't let old wounds convince you that you don't deserve it. Don't let the voices of doubt and pain talk you out of reaching for what you want. Be brave enough to say yes. Try again. To risk getting hurt because the alternative, living small and safe and never knowing what might have been, is so much worse than any temporary pain. My name is Ailsa Drummond now, mate to the Alpha of Alphas, and I stand in a life I never could have imagined 6 months ago. A life that's challenging and beautiful and absolutely worth every painful step it took to get here. I watched my sister marry my mate, yes. But that moment of unbearable pain led me to this one, to standing in the arms of my true mate while our future stretches out before us bright and full of possibility. Your story isn't over. Your moment is coming. And when it does, I hope you'll be brave enough to choose it. Choose yourself. To choose the life and love you deserve instead of settling for what others think you should have. The blood moon rises for all of us eventually. The question is whether we'll be ready to step into its light. If this story resonated with you, if you've been through your own rejection or betrayal or moment when you thought everything was ending, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me the city you're watching from so that I can send you a hug. Because we're all connected by these experiences, all part of a larger pack of people who've survived heartbreak and come out stronger. Your comment, your story, your presence matters. And if you're ready to hear more stories like this, stories about strength and survival and finding love when you least expect it, hit that subscribe button. Join this pack of people who believe in second chances, in choosing yourself, in the courage it takes to reach for happiness even when you're terrified. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their story isn't over, that better things are coming, that pain is temporary but strength is forever. I'm sending strength to everyone who needs it today. To everyone who's hurting, who's doubting, who's wondering if they'll ever find their person or their purpose or their happy ending. You will. Promise you will. Just keep going. Keep choosing yourself. Keep believing. And remember, sometimes the universe doesn't give us what we want because it's preparing us for something infinitely better. Trust the blood moon. Trust the journey. Trust yourself. Now tell me where you're watching from. I want to send you